Welcome back. It's another episode of Butt Crack Cycles where we work on old Harleys like this one right behind me, though this bike really isn't too old. It's a 96 Sportster. It's a 1200. If you go way back into my episodes like 2 years ago, this was actually the first bike that I bought in order to tear it all the way down, fix it, rebuild it, and flip it and sell it. But this has turned into a pretty big project, and I've been pretty busy between then and now, and some other motorcycles that I've bought have been quicker, easier fixes and flips, so they've kind of just gotten bumped to the head of the line, and this thing just keeps getting pushed to the back. But today we're going to spend some more time finally actually working on this. Some of the footage that you're going to see in this episode is from like 6 months ago. I got started again on this bike in the fall and then paused again over the winter, and now it's March, so we're working on this again. So yeah, let's jump right into it. I will try and edit this so it flows pretty good, but I apologize if it doesn't. As always, thanks for watching. Hope you learned something, or at least you're entertained. So we're out here in my little bike shed, and let me turn the camera around and show it to you. I've got the primary off of this bike, and the reason for that is because right here, do you see it? Right there. Let's zoom in on it. That is cracked. Get the camera to focus. There we go. And I pulled the primary cover off just to see how bad that crack was in the primary housing. It doesn't look awful. I've had some people suggest that I should just JB weld it, but I think I'm going to try and braze it with an aluminum brazing rod. But before I can do that, I wanted to go ahead and put a dowel in here to just kind of hold the shape of that and not just run brazing rod into the hole. And if I end up accidentally kind of brazing to the dowel rod, I don't really think that's the end of the world. So before I can get started on this, I am going to jump onto that, which is my 2001 Sportster. This bike is up for sale currently, though haven't had any serious bites on it. And I'm going to run to the Harley dealership. Amazingly, my local Harley dealership, they actually had parts for this thing. Okay, so it's actually a couple days later. I grabbed my parts, I came back home with them. Little small parts in the bag, and here's my primary gasket. But before I actually start fixing this, I've got some low temperature aluminum rods that I'm going to use for this, and I don't want to just go straight for trying to fix the primary housing. I want to do a couple of practice runs. I realized that my little oxygen acetylene torch is out, so I'm going to try this with a map gas torch. So I'm going to set up kind of over there at the other end of my little shop here, just a trial practice area, so I can just spend an hour or whatever screwing around, getting the torch dialed in and the temperature and seeing how these rods flow before I actually try and do it on the bike. I'm not a welder or a fabricator by trade. I'm a mechanic. I can weld and I can fabricate some stuff, but this is a little out of my wheelhouse. But that's part of why I'm doing this, is so that I can just learn new stuff and you know, kind of push myself to grow and get better and you know, just learn new things. So let's go practice. Okay, so I have got the top plate. This is off of a T5 Ford transmission, like a 5-speed out of a Fox body Mustang. It's pretty well junk. I've cleaned up a flat spot here, and I've kind of roughed up an area over here. And then on the bottom side, there's a broken shift fork, which is why this was pulled off. And I don't know if this is aluminum or if this is just like pot metal. It looks like cast aluminum to me. This is probably actually a pretty similar surface to what I've got going on that Sportster. But I think I'm going to start with just the clean, smooth spot and play around with laying some rod down on that, and then play around with the beat up spot, and then flip it over and play around with the shift fork. This costs me nothing but time, and I would much rather screw something up on this than screw something up on the bike, because I'm far from an expert at this. Okay, so just playing around with it on the sort of smooth section where I just kind of sanded it off with some sandpaper. That really didn't go so well. Let me get it focused. There we go. I just kind of made some blobs. It's like I had a really hard time getting it to actually stick to my workpiece. Yeah, I could have taken that off by hand. So those come off like nothing. All I really ended up doing there was melting the end of the rod. I think I've maybe done better over here on the roughed up spot. Nope. Okay, I stopped and I ate some lunch. I watched a YouTube video. Yeehaw, YouTube being useful. And I came back out here, and here I've made another blob on my shift fork. And I actually think this one's pretty good. I got this really clean and really hot. And I think that made it flow better, just like sort of trying to use the heat of the workpiece to run the rod in versus the flame. Seems like the preheat on the workpiece is the trick here. Take a little mini sledge and whack it. See if I can knock it off there. I think I'm on the right track. I'm gonna keep playing with this, and I think I'm on the right track though. I think something of that level of strength is good enough for all I'm trying to do. You know, the primary housing is not supposed to be taking impacts. I think that's why the factory one broke, is because it got dropped. All I really need to do is make something that won't leak and has a nice flat seal and is not have a hole through it to the outside world, and a gasket can seal on, and that's really all I'm trying to do. So I think I'm on the right path here. Let's see how this goes. Cross your fingers, cross your toes, cross your peckers too. It's on there pretty good. I obviously wanted to go higher than it needs to be so I can grind it back down and smooth it back out. I hope this is strong enough. I guess once I start grinding and filing on it, we'll know. I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm doing this really for the first time, so hopefully this is good enough. Okay, so I got maybe like a third of the way through grinding and filing and trying to get that back flat on that bike. And I ended up breaking my aluminum filler rod piece that I built up on there. I broke it off. So I'm probably not going to try this again. I don't think this is working. I don't think I just have enough experience and knowledge to get this done right. I'm going to call a friend of a friend. His name's Seth. He's done some welding work for me before at my previous business. And he's a really good dude. He's very talented, very good at what he does. And maybe he can come out here and do something with this. Probably, most likely, I'm going to have to push this bike onto a trailer and take it to him, because I only have like 20 amps of a 120 volt service out here, and it's not even enough to run my little small MIG welder. I have a Hobart handler, and I have to run that off of a generator. So I'm going to give Seth a call and see what he has to say and what his availability is, because I really need to get this bike behind me going. This has kind of turned into my winter project this year, but the further along I can get on it, the closer I'll be to being done. So I'm gonna put the camera down and make a phone call. All right, so the bike's on the trailer and ready to go behind the truck. So jump in here, head on down the road. We're back home with the bike, and you can see this looks a whole lot better than it did when we started, and a whole lot better than I was gonna do. It's not perfect. He was saying he kind of hit an oil pocket in here and was afraid of having a blowout. I'm not quite sure exactly what that means, but I guess with the TIG he was worried about catching some of that on fire or something, or maybe blowing the metal out because of hitting that oil. So that's about as good as he was able to get it. And I'm gonna take some files and stuff and kind of clean this up because it's still pretty rough. He ground it down some, but I told him just to leave as much material on there as possible, and that I would take care of sort of the final shaping on this. I've been working on the shovel head, and then I came back to work on this, and I think I've got it looking pretty good. It doesn't really come through great on camera. It's hard to get. It's about as good as I can get, but I think that'll hold a gasket just fine. Alright. Up on the front dowel, and we're up on the back dowel. So I started just snugging the bolts down into the cover with just this little T-handle. And as you can see, that is the right size bolt, right length bolt rather. But it just spins and spins and spins. So I guess we're going to take this back off, and I don't know how I missed that, but evidently that hole is boogered up, and we'll fix that next. Looks like I might get lucky here, and there be enough meat left in the housing here where we can just re-tap this. Yeah, actually feels pretty good. Hopefully those threads are far enough out. The first probably one or two of them's kind of rolled a little. I'd like them to be cut a little deeper than that, but I bet we can probably get the bolt to grab in that and still hold torque. These don't torque very much, and I imagine that's probably what happened here, is someone along the way just over torqued this. Alright, so the primary cover's on, and I just snugged it up. I'll go back and torque it later. I left the clutch adjuster and ramp and all that. That's all out for right now, as is the cable, obviously. I don't know if I'm going to use this clutch cable. I'm not quite sure exactly what my handlebar setup's going to look like yet. So for now, I've just left all of that alone. And you'll also notice that the shifter has nothing on it, because this bike has a set of pretty chintzy, you know, just run-of-the-mill aftermarket forward controls that I really don't like. I'm not a big fan of forward controls in general, and they just always seem to have so much slop and play in them. So that's all sort of to be determined. But the bike's up on the stand. Tires are going to be our next thing we're going to go for. I'm going to pull the wheels off of this bike, and then after that, I think electrical. I'm probably going to rip all of the electrical out of this bike and start completely over, and I will most likely just kind of copy what I did over here on my shovel head. I never did publish a wiring schematic for this bike, but I ended up coming up with a pretty clean and simple wiring harness that, if you look at it, you can't see any of it. It's completely tucked in that bike, and that's probably something that I'll replicate over there on the Sportster, is the wiring I did here on the shovel. But for now, I'll throw a ratchet strap or two on the Sportster here on the little chopper project, get it nice and tight on the work stand, and we'll snatch some wheels off of it and get some tires swapped around and take a good look at the brakes and at the drive belt too. Alright, it's a couple of days later, and I realized that I'm kind of off camera right now, but it doesn't really matter. You can still kind of listen to me. I do just want to spend a little bit of time talking while I'm working about this, and you know, this has been a pretty long going project for me, though I really haven't gotten much done on it. I thought that this was going to be a winter project for me this winter, and turns out life just had other plans for me. I had other stuff to do that was more important than this. and that's fine. If you are watching this with a big project kind of looming over your head, thinking, geez, I'm never going to get this thing done, just keep plugging away at it. It's okay if other stuff gets in the way. I know it's easy to watch YouTube or, watch TV or read magazines and watch Instagram and crap like that with guys who like throw a bike together. Oh, it's 2 days before the big bike show and we slap together this badass pinhead in only 14 hours. But that's not real life. So don't get dismayed if your projects take longer than you think they should or other people say they should. Let's see if I can pull this wheel out gracefully. I hate. Wow, I almost flipped the bike off. I went my ratchet. Yeah, I almost never film this because, jeez Louise, I got real front heavy real fast. Front tires on the ground. Yeah, I almost never film pulling wheels and tires off the bikes because it always just seems sketchy to me and I don't enjoy doing it. And it's always just like, I don't know, just a grunt fest. I hate pulling wheels and tires and axles at anything. I can't really explain why. Doesn't matter if it's a Harley or a Peterbilt or a 5-ton army truck. I don't like doing it. So we've got front wheel off, back wheel off, laying in the floor with the old set of tires on it. This is a 21-inch front wheel at a 16-inch back wheel. I initially was kind of wishy-washy about this back wheel, but it's kind of grown on me, and honestly, that's the kind of stuff that with a bike that you're going to sell and try and make a profit on, something like that is better left to the next person. But let's take a look at some tires. These are some of the Shinko E270s. They've got a really cool old school look to them. Let's see if I can get the camera to focus on the tread there. Oops, turning the focus ring the wrong way. There you go. I think those will look really cool. That's the front. And that's our back. I like those a lot. I think those are pretty slick. Got like that kind of pie crust look, old school. I think those will end up looking the bit on this bike. Okay, I think we're gonna end the episode right here. Actually, wheels and tires are off of the bike. I thought I had everything I need to do those tires here myself. Those are tube type tires. Those are tubeless wheels, but it should still work so long as I put some rim strip on the rim and put a tube in. But this is a 21-inch rim strip and a 21-inch tube, so that'll get a front wheel done. But I don't have a 16-inch set of that. I thought I had one on the shelf. Maybe I used it on something. Anyways, I think this is probably a good stopping point on this episode. Next up, we will obviously get tires thrown on the wheels. That's not too big of a deal. And I think I'm sitting here looking at the bike. The bike's right behind the camera. And I think what I want to do next is rip all of the electrical out of this motorcycle and completely rewire the thing from front to back. And once the bike has been rewired, that'll get us to a point where we can button up everything kind of on the bottom of the bike, engine and transmission wise, get handlebar controls figured out, and actually start this thing up for the first time. I've only heard this bike run for about 15 seconds right before I bought it. This bike had a S&S Super Bee on it. I took it apart like a year ago. It was absolutely just destroyed inside. It had cracked emulsion tubes and some other things. And I have a brand new CV carburetor sitting in a box over there. I'll need to change the intake manifold and put a support bracket. So there's plenty of work to do on this before this bike is rideable, or, well, honestly, even before this bike can run, never mind actually being able to ride it. But we are one step closer to having that. I also need to decide on stuff like what color am I going to paint the tank, what fender am I going to put on it. There's a lot to do, but for now, you know, I've actually made some progress. Anyways, as always, thanks for watching. I hope you learned something or at least were entertained. I'll see you guys on the next one.